All right, good evening, District 68, and welcome to the speech contest judging webinar. I'm going to start off by saying if any of you watched the webinar 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that contest season is upon us, and that one of the most important things during contest season is to have qualified judges. So tonight, we're going to talk about the importance of judging and the importance of being trained to judge. I usually tell people that when I first started competing, there were times when I competed and I won at my club and I won at my area, and I got to district, division and district, and then all of a sudden I didn't win in district, and I thought I had been robbed. But the fact of the matter was I wasn't robbed. I just didn't understand what the judging criteria was, and I think that happens a lot. But judging is one of the most important parts of any contest, and we're going to talk about tonight. And so here we go. Here comes the judge. And what is the responsibility of the judge? It's plain and simple. The judge needs to pick the winner. Contest, as everybody knows, benefits everybody. It benefits the competitors. It can benefit other Toastmasters who are in the audience and on the team, and of course the general public. So we need to make sure it is incumbent upon us that our judging is not only fair, but that our judges are qualified. They know what it is they're doing. They know what it is they're looking for in a Toastmasters speech contest, be that the international contest, humorous contest, evaluating table topics, whatever the contest, to make sure that everybody gets the greatest benefit out of that. We need to make sure that these contests are fair and that the judges know what it is that they're supposed to be looking for, what they're supposed to be judging on, and how to judge. So what are the obligations of a judge? Well, first off, its first obligation is to the contestants. You know, the contestants put in a lot of time preparing for these contests. I know Joel can agree with me. But by the time you get to the international stage, or even to the division or the district stage, you've put in plenty of hours putting your speech together, writing your speech, editing your speech, practicing your speech. To practice and put in that much work and then get to a contest and find out that the judges didn't know what they were doing or that the judges were not fair is quite a blow, and it can be very upsetting to a contestant. So the first obligation of the judge, I think, is to the contestants to make sure that they know what it is they're looking for, what they're supposed to be doing, how to do it, and what is and what is not fair. The second is to Toastmasters International. We often have a lot of visitors at contests, and they too will look at a contest, and if it becomes fairly obvious to them that the correct speakers didn't win or at least place, then they have their doubts as to the validity of Toastmasters International. So we definitely made to make sure that we're doing a good job for Toastmasters. And thirdly, again, is to the audience. Again, the audience is coming to see a fair and impartial contest. They're coming to see a contest where the judges know what it is they're doing, know what it is they're looking for, and that they are as objective as possible. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about. Also, the judges have a responsibility to themselves. Do you want to be able to sleep at night? Do you want to know that you did your best job, that you did everything you could with integrity in that contest? So what are the duties of a judge? First off, this is confusing to people who are doing it for the first time. As a judge, you're not an evaluator. An evaluator has a responsibility in his club to give the speaker the best evaluation possible, to tell them what they did right, to tell them how they can improve, and then to inspire them to keep going. As a judge, that is not your job. You're not there to evaluate, you're there to judge. That's a whole different ballgame. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. Again, the duty of the judge is to pick the winner. And sometimes that can be difficult. Sometimes Speeches are very close to each other. You may have 2 or 3 contestants who are all very good, and you have to pick which one is the winner. There is a particular way to do that. The third one is confidentiality. And this kind of ties back to the not an evaluation. As a judge, it is your responsibility to consider yourself a secret judge. You need to keep all of your information confidential. You fill out your ballot, you turn in your ballot, you destroy your guide. Again, if anybody finds out, if any of the speakers find out that you were a judge and they come to you and ask you how they did, you cannot answer that. You're not an evaluator. You're not there to tell them how they could do better, whether they were first, second, third place, or whether they didn't place at all. It is not your responsibility to be an evaluator. There is a code of ethics that Toastmasters has set down for us as judges. First off is to avoid bias. And bias is simply, you need to be discriminate, but you cannot pick somebody because you like the way they look or because they're a friend. You need to be as objective as you can. You don't time speeches. That is the timer's job. The judge should not concern himself with timing at all. You need to support the rules and standards. You should have read your rule book from top to bottom several times and know that you know exactly what the rules and standards are of a Toastmasters contest. Now we're going to talk about the qualities of a judge. A judge needs to be all these things. We need to be able to trust that the judge has impeccable integrity, that they know what they're doing. As a judge, it's almost like being a grammarian in some parts because you have to, or an evaluator, because you do have to be a good listener. You have to be analytical, accurate, and fair. And we're going to talk about those things as we move on and how to do that. The greatest challenge I think any judge faces is being objective. The challenge is definitely objectivity. Judging tends to be, whether we like it or not, if we're not careful, it becomes subjective. We all have our likes and dislikes. We all have favorite topics. We all have favorite mannerisms. We like people who are like us. We need to try our best not to use any of those things when we're judging. You can't avoid it completely, but you need to do the best you can to be as objective as possible. So how can I be as objective as I possibly can? How do I keep from being subjective? These are some of the barriers. There is an ongoing discussion in Toastmasters as to where the best place is to speak in the contest. The general opinion is that being the last speaker or close to the last speaker is very preferable to being the first. And why is that? It's because there's a natural inclination for the audience and for judges to hold back on their appraisal of the first speaker because they want to leave room for the speakers behind them. And oftentimes, once you've heard 8 or 9 speeches, it's very easy to be so impressed with the last speaker that you really forgot what it is the first speaker done. The first speaker can sometimes be brilliant, the last speaker be brilliant, and the edge will go to the last speaker because we have a tendency as human beings to be more aware at the end than we are at the beginning. So we need to do our best not to do that. We're going to talk about that when we get to the ballot and how we can try our best to pay attention to each speaker and judge each speech individually, regardless of whether they're first, middle, or last. Some of the barriers we have is, it says, give someone else a chance. If there's a speaker who has won the contest before, or maybe has won the contest 2 or 3 times, and we say, well, you know, he's already won enough. It's time for somebody else. So I'm going to help the underdog. Well, that's not your job. Your job is to stay objective and to, again, to judge each speech on its own merit, not on your personal opinion as to whether somebody has competed too many times or whether somebody's coming in and we ought to give them a break because they're the underdog. Another one of the things, problems we have as human beings is to give somebody extra credit because they're such a great Toastmaster. They may not have given exactly the best speech, but man, they've done so much for Toastmasters. They've gone to every meeting. They've been an area director in the past, or they've mentored people in your club or in another club, and you've seen them around for a long time. And so they've got this aura of them in your mind that makes them special. But again, we have to be objective, not subjective. Or it might be somebody you don't like the way they look. You've had a problem with them in the past, or you think they just think they're something. And so we call that the reverse halo. So even if he gives a great speech, I just don't like him. Well, there's no place for that in judging. This next one is second time around. This is, you may have seen someone's speech at the club level, and then you've seen them at the area, and you've seen them at the division, and now they're at district, and you love their speech the first 3 times they did it, and maybe they didn't do it quite so great this time, but you know that they have the possibility of doing it, and you've already seen this speech, and you know this is a great speech. Again, that has no place in judging. You're judging the performance at the contest they're at. I can tell you personally, there have been times when I have been competing and I did a better job at the club level than I did at the area. Or I did better at the area than I did at the division. That doesn't matter. It has to be, you have to judge on what you're seeing in front of you at the time. Some other barriers. It's not what you're used to. You're used to, maybe the person speaking is standing behind the podium or the lectern, and they do a great job with their speech, but you're used to people moving around. Or they're speaking about a subject that you're not familiar with. Their personality is maybe a little different than what you're used to. Speaker prejudice, you don't like the speaker. Subject prejudice, either you do or you don't like the subject that they're speaking about. That's really not what you're there to judge. You're not to judge the person themselves, their character, or you're not there to judge whether you agree with their subject material. You're there to look at how they present it. A personal preference. Or you're just unfamiliar with the judging form. And after tonight, you should not be unfamiliar with the judging form. Or misconceptions about how judging is supposed to work. We're going to cover all of that tonight. This is what I'm going to tell you. If you, after tonight's training, you decide that you can't be objective, don't judge. Don't even consider doing it. If there's somebody in the contest that you are pulling for, you have a bias toward them, don't do it. If there's someone in the contest that you don't personally care for, and you don't think that you can be fair and do it from an objective standpoint, when you're asked to be a judge player, I'm sorry, I can't do it this time. Okay. Now we're going to look at the International Speech Contest, Judges Guide and Ballot. The humorous speech contest is very similar. The first thing I want you to notice is that it's separated into 2 parts. The top, for good reason, is called a guide. It is there to help you in your judging. It is not the ballot. It is there to help you fill the ballot. After you have sat through the contest and you've filled out your guide, and you then use that to make your decision as the first, second, and third place winners, you will turn in your ballot. You will destroy your guide. You take it, fold it up, put it in your pocket, and take it home and throw it away, or you shred it. You do not leave it folded up and sitting on the table where somebody can see it, and you don't throw it in the waste container at the contest where somebody can fish it out and look at it. This, again, needs to be confidential. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to use that ballot, but as you can see, the first part is your guide. The second part is the actual ballot. You will want to have your ballot either torn off before the end of the contest, or at least folded and ready to tear off to make things easy at the end. Now, using the ballot, there are different techniques that people use. Some people simply take notes. They don't use the guide at all. While the speeches are going on, they take notes, and then they fill out their guide, and then they fill out their ballot, and they'll score it later. Not my favorite, but some people do it that way. There's absolute scoring. This is when you take your guide, you fill it out for each speaker. You don't change anything on that ever. Once you put the numbers in, they stay there. At the end, you add them from top to bottom. You get a score for each person, for each speaker, and you use that score to pick your winner, second and third place. Again, that is totally acceptable. It's not my favorite way, but it is totally acceptable to do it that way. The next one is relative scoring, and I'm going to add that with the next one, which I call the plus and minus. This means that you give in your guide, you fill out the guide, you give people their numbers, and then you keep it relative in that if you've got 3 people with a 4 or a 10 or a 15, you think about it and say which one actually did better, and you can give them a plus or a minus behind that to help you in your balloting. You can go right to left. You start at the end and go back to the front, to the first speaker, and check it out and see if there's anything you need to adjust. If you look at your guide, you will see that not every part of the speech has the same importance. The content is 50%. The majority of what you're supposed to be looking at is 50%. The delivery is 30%, and the language is 20%. Now, if you notice, content's 50%. But if someone has great content and has 50% or 48%, but their delivery and their language is not that hot, they could still lose. If their delivery and language is perfect and they have a 0 on content, they're not going to do very well. All 3 of those things play in together, but they do all have a different importance. So let's look at the content. What am I supposed to be looking for as a judge when I'm looking at content? Well, overall, what you're looking at for is speech development and structure. Did they have a captivating opening? Did they have an opening that got everybody's attention? Did they engage the audience? Was their thesis, their premise, and their main point all clear? And we'll talk about that a little more later on. Did they indicate what the structure of their speech was going to be? Do you know what it is they're talking about? The body. Again, how did they go from their opening into their body? Did they use story, fact, and examples, transitions? How did they exit from the body into their conclusion? Did they restate the structure, restate the thesis, and take away value? I'm going to talk about those a little bit more in detail. Let's look at speech development and support material. If they're using props, if they're using something to support their speech, is it relevant to the thesis? Does it advance the speech, or is it just a distraction? Was it smoothly presented? When they went from their opening and they entered into the body, did they do that well? Was it a smooth transition? As they tell stories, are they transitioning smoothly from one story to the other, or is it abrupt? Is it broken? Does it not? Do the stories and the points not smoothly flow from one to the other? Did the ideas build on one another? We've all heard the, tell a story, make a point, tell a story, make a point, tell a story, make a point. Well, each time they told a story and made a point, did it build on the idea that they began with? And does it further their thesis? Their exit from the body, or going from the body of the speech to the conclusion. In their conclusion, did they do what we call callbacks or flashbacks? Did they bring us back to the beginning and make us remember what it was they told us they were going to speak about in the first place? How was their effectiveness? Did they achieve the general purpose? The general purpose of a speech is either to inspire, persuade, or inform. So if they were coming to give us an inspirational speech, did we feel inspired at the end? If they were coming to try to change our mind about something, did they at least, even if we didn't change our mind, make us at least see a different viewpoint? Or if they were coming to inform us, do we know more now than when we began? Did they achieve their specific purpose? This is what we call the thesis. How is it they're going to inspire us? What exactly was their point? How are they persuading us to change our mind from one thing to another? What was the actual, I'm going to put it like this. The inspire, persuade, and inform is the what. The achievement of the specific purpose is the how. How did they inspire us? How did they persuade us? How did they perform us? Did it make sense? Did it achieve its purpose? This is something that I think a lot of new judges miss. Remember, we said that the benefit was not only to the Toastmasters and to the contestants, but also to the audience. We need to pay attention not just to the speaker, but we need to pay attention to the audience. Was the audience tuned in? Were they interested to what the person was saying? Were they leaning forward in their seats? Or were they talking among one another? How did the audience receive the message? Was this a positive response from the audience? Was the subject appropriate from the audience? I have been to contests where people spoke on inappropriate subject matter, and it never does you much good. What was the value of the speech? Was the speech meaningful? Did the original thesis and the supporting materials have substance and logic? Did everything make sense together? Or did you, at the end of the speech, go, well, that was entertaining, that was fun, but I have no idea what they were trying to say? All speeches, and I don't care whether this is humorous or international speech, what type of speech, should always inspire audience thinking. It should make the audience contemplate their life, what's going on. That does not mean it can't be humorous. I have some of the most humorous speeches I've ever heard had a definitely meaningful takeaway for the audience. I have heard many inspiring speeches that were humorous. I've heard even more humorous speeches that made us change our mind. inspired us. Here's a question to ask yourself. When a speaker is finished, did they make the audience think? Did they somehow touch your heart? Did they touch the heart of the audience? If anybody remembers Joelle's international speech, that's exactly what it did. It touched the heart. And did it tickle your funny bone? We can do all three in the same speech. Again, and now we're going to move on from content to delivery. We're going to look at the physical. What's the person dressed like? What do they look like? How do they carry themselves? Was their appearance congruent with purpose? Does it make sense if the person is dressed in a tracksuit and they're talking to you about sales, or they're talking to you about how to improve your business, or they're talking to you about your website? Not particularly. If they're in a tracksuit and they're inspiring you to get in shape, then yes, the appearance is congruent with the purpose. So don't automatically assume that because somebody's not in a coat and tie that their appearance is not congruent. And don't assume that because they show up with a t-shirt and jeans that that's not congruent to their purpose. You have to look at it with the speech. Their face, what were their facial expressions like? Did their facial expressions, did they smile when they were talking about something sad? Were they serious all the time? Did they use their face correctly? Their hands, were the hands flying all about? Were they in their pocket? Did they use them to further the speech? Were they making contact with the audience? We say eye contact. Sometimes it's more than just eye contact. Sometimes it's emotional contact. But again, are they connecting with the audience? I don't care how good your information is. If you don't connect with the audience first, then you're missing something. Is there anything detracting about their physical appearance? Were they wearing something loud and flashy that took your eye away from what they were doing? I was told early on when I walked up never to wear a badge, never to wear a pen in my pocket. Those are the things that detract from the message. Body language and position. Was their posture like? Do their hand motions and their movements punctuate and demonstrate the points of their speech, or are they superfluous? What is their energy like? Are they upbeat? Or are they excited to be there? And again, not only are they upbeat and excited, but is their energy congruent with the message that they're bringing? You're not going to expect somebody to be upbeat and excited if they're talking about a serious emotional subject. You want to make sure that their energy matches their message. Are they smooth and purposeful, or are they searching for their next line? Or are they confused about where they are on the stage? Is everything congruent with the purpose? And are they in character or mood? If someone is doing within their speech, they're doing two different characters, and they intersperse those characters back and forth instead of keeping them separate, or they're in a certain mood and then they break the mood, or it's not congruent, it's not smooth, it doesn't all work together. Those are all the things we need to look for. Their voice. Is their voice strong? Do they enunciate correctly? Can you understand what they're saying, or is everything muddled and their words running on one into the other? Can they clearly be heard? Or are they projecting enough for the people in the back row to hear? Or are they kind of just get time to time, you can't quite understand what they're saying, and they're not enunciating things, so you're not really sure what you're saying. Again, Are they believable? Is their voice matching their speech? Emphasis and inflection. When they get to a point that they're really trying to make, do they lower their voice and speak stronger? Or do they end a statement that sounds like it might be a question? Where is the inflection and the emphasis right in their speech? Again, variety, speed, volume, pitch, those things. Do they pause when they should be pausing? Are they speaking at the right pace? Are they altering their pace? Are there times in the speech that it calls for that they speak a little quicker? And other times when they give you a chance to catch up. What is the pitch like? Is it all the same monotone all the way through? We all love to hear speakers like that, don't we? Their delivery, their manner, are they direct? Are they confident? Do they have assurance? Is their enthusiasm congruent with the message that they're bringing? But earlier we talked about the audience's attention to the speaker. Maybe even more important is the speaker's attention to the audience. Is he up there to perform, or is he up there to make connection with his audience and to make sure that his audience walks away with something? Whenever I hear a speaker that is actually interested in his audience and giving them some information or inspiring them to do something or persuading them, his interest is in them and not in himself. When that happens, the audience responds accordingly. Is he confident, he or she confident in the audience reaction? If the audience laughs somewhere he's not expecting it, how does she respond? If the